Welcome back to the old Parents Helper Show. I'm Steve Ducey. You know, they were raised on Brady Bunch reruns and MTV, and now they're raising kids on their own. We're talking about the so-called Generation X, young people who have been called everything from slackers to cynics. But what are they like as parents? Child Magazine wondered and took a look at that in their August issue. And today, editor Jonathan Small joins us live. Hi, Jonathan.
Hello.
All right, let's start at the very beginning.
Okay.
What does the X in Generation X stand for, if anything, and who exactly are we talking about?
Well, the X, I think, is a sort of a generic term. It's the fact that Generation X can't be pinned down in any certain way. They hate, there's one thing that Generation X hate is to be labeled. So they hate the term Generation X just from the start. It refers to people that are 19 to 30 years old. 45 million Americans fall in that age category.
You do?
I do.
Yes.
I am
We
a 28. I am a 28-year-old Gen Xer. Despite the myth that Gen Xers are, these slacker, Brady Bunch watching, Beavis and Butthead, worshiping people who are lazy and don't really want to find a job and like to complain a lot, it's actually quite the contrary to that. There's more people working in this generation than any generation previously. 3/4 of the women work and 92% of the men are working in my generation.
Many dual incomes in marriages.
Many dual incomes.
Okay. So how has, I'm part of the baby boomer generation, how has our generation, I don't want to say ruined it for you, but I'm giving you an opportunity now to get back. What is it that we've done that has impacted this generation?
Well, you've done good things and you've done bad things. We were raised in the 70s. Well, I'll start with the bad first, then we'll go to the good.
Okay.
We were raised in the 70s in homes where the divorce rate was skyrocketing, where both parents were working. We were the first latchkey kids. We came home and were more likely to find, a Post-it note on the refrigerator than nice warm and cookies and milk and mommy, So in that sense, that has had a major impact on the way we are as parents. On the positive side, basically, we were born into a time where great strides were made in civil rights and women's equality. Now we take it for granted that there's dual working families, dual working parents, and it wasn't taken for granted 20 years ago. So you did make inroads in that.
Jonathan, why do you think we have this perception that people of your generation are just lazy, no-good kids who want to stay at home, just want to watch cable TV, which, by the way, is a great idea. Good idea. You're doing it right now. But where do you think that came from?
Well, the media had a lot to do with that one. I think it seemed to start, this book was written called Generation X by Douglas Copeland, and he made a point that a lot of people in our generation have what he called Mac jobs, which were basically just jobs where they were inputting low-paying jobs that would change every 2 weeks, etc. And this, once the media caught on to this, they just loved it, and they sort of milked it for everything it was worth, and it became almost something that was placed upon us rather than something that was really a real thing. And then movies like Reality Bites and the characters like Ethan Hawke, they don't help things.
Yeah.
They are making it a lot worse.
Well, you praised the baby boom generation in some ways, but you also were bad-mouthing them for, becoming the first generation of latchkey kids and stuff like that. But, it wasn't really the parents. It was the economic realities of the times. Times were tougher. Things cost more. Mom decided to go to work. Equality, all that came into play. You can't really blame the generation itself. It was just in the confluence of the crosshairs of the culture.
Fair enough, but we don't like you anyway. Actually, no. The boomers, what can you say? I mean, they've been good and bad for us. I mean, one thing that the boomers started with this whole self-help movement, and that has had a good effect on the parents of Generation X and a bad effect. I mean, we are probably the most informed parents of any generation of parents ever. We are, coming into a world where we have more information than we know what to do with. And
so
thanks to you guys.
Jonathan, how does that then affect parenting and parenting issues? Do you find that because you have so much information that your expectations are different, you're more involved parents, the fathers more involved than they used to be? What are you seeing with these parents?
Very much so that the father, I mean, the whole idea that dad, is doing the dishes is not a big deal anymore in today's families. I think it's very much more knowledge about parenting. There's a lot more sources of information, on the net even, magazines like Child, etc.
More equality in the marriage.
Much more
both helping
equality
out
in the
with
marriage.
that.
And it's taken for granted. It's not even a big surprise. Parents today are surprisingly more conservative than the boomer parents. They're protective of their kids. They're growing up in this world of AIDS and drugs and violence, and they're very protective. They want to make sure that their kid is raised in a world of innocence that they didn't have.
What about spirituality? What are you seeing with parents? Are they taking their kids to church or synagogue? Are they worshiping themselves? What are you seeing?
Well, it's interesting to use the word spirituality because that is the term that I think the Generation X is using right now, rather than religion. I think, I think there was a poll that said something like 59% people consider themselves religious people, but they don't necessarily believe in organized religion. I think Generation X has a little problem generally with a hierarchical system. I mean, there is a belief in a greater source, but it's organized religion is not. And of course, there's a lot of Gen Xers that are going to church, etc., so I can't make that generalization.
Sure.
And the other problem, we're almost out of time, is financial. This generation, simply for one reason or another, doesn't have as much money as the baby boomers.
Yeah. We are, since the early 1800s, we're making the least out of any generation. So that is definitely impacting every way that we parent.